PR Connections Radio presents Voting is more than just a right, it's a powerful tool for change. Every vote counts and every voice matters. Voting protects your rights and helps to build a better future. And it's a way to hold our leaders accountable. Voting isn't just about the big elections either. Local elections impact our daily lives. It is important to study the candidates and the issues in order to make an informed decision. Don't sit it out. Your vote is your power.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Breaking the Silence, Finding the Courage to be Heard, the podcast where we turn quiet fears into confident voices. And I'm your host, Dane Larson. Now, over the last few episodes, we've explored fear from every angle. Why we stay silent, why confidence doesn't come first, what happens in our bodies, the stories we tell ourselves, and how intimidating rooms can quiet even the strongest voices. So today, we arrive at that moment where all of that understanding meets action. The first time that you choose to speak anyway. Not because fear disappeared, not because you suddenly felt confident, but because something inside of you decided that your voice mattered more than staying quiet. So this episode is called The First Time You Speak Anyway, and it's about courage, not a personality trait, but a choice. So today, to actually discuss just that, having that courage, my guest is Dane Larson. Hi, Dane. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you for having me.
Oh, and thank you for agreeing to be on this podcast at the very last moment. But before we get into that, tell us just a little bit about yourself, what you do.
Yeah, so I work in the creative services realm of the corporate world. So I work for a biomedical company, but my job is to make all of that feel interesting and exciting. And a lot of that comes with, trying to get my ideas, out to the team and to make it, happen so that patients, all of our people can or want to have our product and, do with all of that.
Absolutely. So as I think I heard you say you are a marketing communications manager.
Yes. So my title is marketing communications manager. So I help manage everything from how things look to how things sound and trying to portray everything that our business does to the customer. It takes a lot of back and forth between our internal teams, between our product development team, knowing the product and then communicating that out to everybody who needs to hear it.
And I have heard you say teams, this team, that team, which gives me the impression that you deal with a lot of teams. So that must mean you must have to talk a lot in what you do. What percentage would you say? A large amount,
I would say it's about 80% of my time is spent talking, whether it's virtually like we are now or on, Teams or IM messaging. There's a lot of communication that just has to happen constantly, where that's something I definitely had to get used to kind of growing into this role where growing up, usually like to be individual and keep to myself and just, not have to speak my mind to other people. So it's been a big change.
Wow. And as far as being confident when you speak, was that something that just came naturally or you felt like you had to work at it?
It was definitely something I had to work at. People tell me that it comes naturally. It seems like it comes naturally, but there's always a hint of lingering anxiety or things when I have to, come prepared to a meeting. It's not that I'm unprepared. It's just, I always think worst case scenario. What, like, if I just fail to speak, even now, like, what's the worst that can happen? I'm like a meme on the internet? Probably not. But, all these things run through your head and you just kind of psych yourself out. But at the end of the day, I always get through it and do it, I think, a decent job. But, it's there. It's always there.
And speaking of anxiety, I just have to let our listeners know that it was less than an hour ago that you found out, or I asked you to be on the podcast because, there were some things that, kind of didn't line up the way they were supposed to line up. But, I just asked you off the cuff, hey, how would you like to be on my podcast? And I'm not sure when you answered that question, you knew it was today and you knew it was in less than an hour. But
Yeah.
just kind of tell us how you felt about that.
So at first, very excited. Of course, I'd love to be on the podcast. I'd have time to prepare, think about some of my, talking points, maybe depending on the topic. And I was ready to do it. And then the next question was, okay, so yeah, when should we schedule it? Oh, 8 minutes from now. Okay, yeah, no, that sounds good. Let's, kind of, but it's just one of those things where that's not the first time it's happened in my life where you kind of have to be not always ready to present, but just, go with the flow. I didn't have anything else left to do in the day. I've finished all my chores. So why not? Let's get on and have a chat. And that's really what this is, which is a great thing about breaking the silence. It just kind of shows that if you're up for anything, just have at it.
Yep, that's right. You just have to kind of push yourself to take that first step.
Yeah.
So, did you hesitate at all once you realized that it was only in 8 minutes?
Of course. Yeah. There is that moment of hesitation. And I think in the past, I probably would have froze. But, it comes with experience of having these things happen, because I think no matter how much you avoid wanting to be in front of people or be in a tough conversation or things like that, it's inevitable that it's going to happen. And I found that, I've been, right out of college, I joined my current company. I've been with the company for 12 years, which is more than I think a lot of people my age could say,
That's for
but
sure.
it's really helped me shown me and grown myself in that way, to be able to kind of, flip and do, this kind of stuff. So I think that helps, just the practice of doing it over and over again, whether you are willing to or not. That also helps.
Absolutely. And, knowing you the way I know you, I know that when you decide that you're going to do something, you want to make sure that you do it right. You have that level of perfection when it
Yes.
comes to attempting projects. Does that play into your desire to speak off the cuff, so to speak?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to be always the most polished form of myself, whether that's here on camera or, sometimes even with, in outings, friends, family, there's a level of how you want to present yourself. But if you think about it, the way you come to the table as yourself is always the best version of yourself you're going to give everybody else. So it always, you think about it, you reel about, okay, how am I going to do this? How am I going to say this? Kind of the best moments come when you're the least prepared, because you're your most authentic you. And that's what people want at the end of the day. We're so used to what we see when we scroll, like on Instagram. You're seeing everyone's best moments, and that's so hard to get away from. Like, that person isn't having that day every day. The more and more we see that, I think the more and more we crave authenticity. And so when people in a room, whether it's a conference room, a Zoom meeting, if you're just authentic, if you flub, if you say a word that doesn't mean what you thought it meant, I think people gravitate toward that more and more these days.
Yep, that's absolutely right. The authenticity that you bring to the table is going to make all the difference in the world. Do you remember the first time, I guess either professionally or personally, that you were called to speak? And how
Yeah.
did you react, or what was that situation like?
Yeah. So for the first part of my professional life, I should say, I would be in meetings and I wouldn't really speak up a lot. I was more or less taking things in and um, just trying to learn and know where I fit. And I also was afraid of asking the wrong question or asking something that I didn't know that everybody else in the room already knew. And then someone once told me that, well, if you're invited to the meeting, that means they want your input. So that kind of started to get my, you know, cogs turning like, well, how do I fit in this particular situation? But going back to your question, I think the first big moment I had was, so my company is based in San Diego. This is where I live.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
I was flown out to New York. That's where we were working with a brand agency. And it was when we had acquired a company and we were kind of rebranding our whole thing. And I was part of that initiative because I'd been with the company for so long. So I'm in this New York City boardroom and with all the higher up executives, and we're reviewing brand strategy and at this point our logo, which I know all about. I know in my heart I'm an expert at it, but I feel like the junior in the room. And so there was a moment where there was a part in the logo people were like really stuck on. I was like, well, what if we do this and do that without saying too much? And it was like the light bulb that switched in the room. And that's now the logo you see today for our company, which set the scene for everything. So it was that moment where I was like, oh, like what I said not only mattered, but made an impact literally for the future of our logo for the company. So that was kind of an aha moment on a really big stage for me. Um, so I think that was a good moment to realize, even if it's something you think might not matter, it's just an opinion, it might matter because no one else is thinking what you're thinking in your head.
Absolutely. And, not only did you step up to the stage, but you designed the stage. And that
Mhm.
design for your company stage is something that just, it is part of the legacy. And
Mhm.
who knew that it was going to be that moment? That's really phenomenal.
Yeah.
I think about, it reminds me of earlier on when I was in the corporate world and I was doing presentations on a regular basis, going back to what you said about perfection, it was the expectation when you had time to prepare and
Mhm.
get in front of people and to talk about our brand that it needed to be perfect, that we needed to have all the word tracks exactly what they were. And then when you rehearsed, you would get stopped and say, well, you should say it this way and do it this way. And so I got into the habit of needing to be perfect in that way and to speak perfect in that way. So now that I've transitioned into, I'd have to say, this space, sometimes it's difficult to just roll with it.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you have had that experience where you've had to prepare for a presentation and you felt it had to be a certain way.
Yes, definitely. That what to your point, that's the part that I kind of still struggle with and I'm still practicing and learning. You almost don't want to be too prepared. And in my line of business, I do a lot of presentation design for people who will be presenting. And so it's giving me another lens of these high up executives that I'm, making presentations for also have the same questions I do when I present. So it's not an unfamiliar territory, whether you're a junior or an executive. We are all wondering the same thing. How is the audience going to react? there's some people who want a strict talk track. They want to be that prepared. It still works, but is it as authentic as someone who has just talking points that they know and they just want to kind of speak to? So level of preparedness kind of dictates how you come off in terms of authenticity. I think it all comes back to that. Do you want to be scripted, or do you want to just sound like yourself and be confident in what you're saying? And I think that's what it comes down to, is the confidence.
That's right. You bring up a good point. A lot of times when people become over prepared, they memorize a script as opposed to having the bullet points. And so just having the bullet points really gives you the flexibility and the confidence that you need in order to get through the, whatever the situation is that you have to do. So now I asked you about the first time you spoke. Can you drum up a situation where now you've had some speaking experiences under your belt where you felt really confident going into a speaking situation?
Yeah, I think so. So it was, I don't know how long ago it was, but in my professional work, we have weekly meetings with our creative services team. So it is a closer knit group of just our team, but I was asked to kind of run that meeting. And so it was my opportunity, really first opportunity, to kind of present something interesting to the team. And so I did have a PowerPoint presentation, ready and set up. What we were doing was let me take a step back. I had everybody kind of take a little quiz on their personality style, so how we fit together as a group. And then I presented the results. And I wanted to do it in a way that wasn't just like slide slapping people with just regular information. So I challenged myself to not put any words on the screen or like bullet points. It was all just imagery and pictures, and I had to speak to it. And so I found that as a really good exercise, because it was my small group of people, to kind of practice those skills of not relying on a talk track or bullet points on a slide, and just to kind of speak to what I already knew. And there was some practice. I did spend, an hour or so practicing before how I would present it. But when the time came, it just felt like a conversation that we're having now. And so I think that's important, with people who are struggling with speaking. Forget about sounding correct. Just sound authentic and say what you know. Don't try and, come up with facts or sound like somebody else. Stick to what you know. It'll come out in an authentic way and people will appreciate it, and what you're presenting will make sense.
Yep, I just love what you said. What's sticking in my mind when you said, I didn't just want to be slide slapping people.
Yeah.
Because I've heard the whole death by PowerPoint, right? But I've never heard slide slapping. But I'm going to have to use that one. As a matter of fact, I have to remind myself in my next speaking engagements that come up, that to really just focus on the imagery. When I prepare, for example, for Toastmasters, and I have a speech that's 5 to 7 minutes long, I mean, there's no way that I can stand up in front of folks and read it. So I have to bullet it. They say sometimes, depending on how long it is, you just need to divide it up into 3 points. Or if it's longer, then maybe 7 points, because they say people remember 7 points, just like the telephone number. But what has helped me the most is that I actually create a presentation for myself that only has visuals. So then before I actually present it, I'm showing the visuals to myself and then saying my word tracks as I look at those visuals. And that's the best way to internalize a presentation. Internalize, not memorize. So, in that regard, that has helped me a lot. And so when you think of our audience who's out there listening, and there are those that are waiting for just the right moment to speak. What would you tell them?
There's never a right moment. And especially as we're more in the virtual space, it's harder to try and find when you can interject. I mean, that's what I've always found is when you don't want to always speak over people. It takes a certain personality for someone to kind of, overbear the conversation, and nobody likes that person, right? So I think it's just a matter of not being afraid to interject. I mean, when the time is right. I've been fortunate that my current manager, I have a good relationship with, that, he'll kind of tee up a moment of, hey, Dane, what do you think about this? So I would say if it's in a group setting, maybe you have a confidant, within the meeting that can help, transition the conversation to, hey, what do you think about this? Sometimes that's all it takes is to be called on. Not to be called on when you're not ready for it. I know that could be kind of,
Like, I gotcha.
right. What do you think? Are you listening? No, not that. But sometimes that's the little push you need. So if you need a transition to being more productive in a conversation, maybe there is someone in there that you can say, hey, we're going into this meeting, maybe tee it up for me once. And that can kind of bring me into the conversation. Because once you get that first idea out there, your first comment, you're kind of now in it. You're in the conversation. People are looking at you. It's kind of like, I'll take it back to Wheel of Fortune, which I know we both love to watch. When you get that first puzzle solved, out of the way, then the rest you're kind of like, okay, we're good. We're in it.
I got this. Yeah.
If you have the courage to just speak up, or if someone's kind enough to tee you up, that really kind of opens the floodgates to just being in the conversation. You feel more comfortable. And then time and time after that, for me, it's become a lot easier because you become a voice that people are expecting to hear versus somebody in the corner trying to chime in.
Absolutely. And that's not only great advice for all of our listeners out there, but I'm thinking about those that are listening who are leaders in their organization. Because if you're leaders in the organization and you have a team of individuals where their range of confidence in speaking, goes from they're terrified to speak, they don't often join the conversation in meetings, to those that are trying to take over the meeting, then as leaders, you have the opportunity to reach out to them to take them out of their shell. I know when I was managing a team, I had that range of confidence, and I would actually have some of my team members, or at least one or two at a time, to take the responsibility of leading the next meeting. So they knew what it was that they were going to talk about, and then they would be the ones that would be up in front. And it was low risk because it was their team. These are people that they pretty much felt comfortable, but then it raised their confidence. And I could see just the progression of how they went from less confident to more confident. So to those who are out there who are leading a team, this would be really good advice for you as well. I also want to bring to the attention of those of you who are listening and those of you who have been just faithful followers of Breaking the Silence, Finding the Courage to be Heard. If you look at that logo, Dane was responsible for designing this logo with all of his marketing expertise. Do you know can you kind of tell us what that process was like, knowing what, my identity, my brand was before we even had a logo? What were you thinking?
Yeah. So this is the really exciting part of, I guess, my brain that I get to tap into, which is finding not a problem, but matching a need with something that can be solved by design. I think that's where I really thrive. So this particular logo that you're seeing is kind of half of the Larson's Legacy Bank logo, but in general, you're seeing, the feather pen with the audio symbols, which kind of combines your worlds, which you started, writing and, your memorable quotes and everything. And now it's being vocalized in so many ways. And so it was a way of combining those two things in a way that was still really recognizable and unique to you. Also, if you look closely and or if you could imagine, it's a G for Gale. So you have half of that infinity symbol that kind of comes around and then goes down with the feather pen. So you have a little bit of personal touch with, the functional touch. And I think that's where my worlds collide. My whole life has been kind of meshing people who are in different buckets. I'm like a walking melting pot in really all aspects of life, whether it's work, my upbringing, everything. So I think that's where I thrive, and that's where I really, found joy in helping you create that.
Well, that's phenomenal. And, your creativity and your excitement, enthusiasm about what you do definitely shines through. I wouldn't have had anyone else to design my logo. And so I appreciate it because, you've made such a difference. And you had mentioned the quotes. One of my favorite quotes, and I think it might have been the first one that I came up with, which has really been my cornerstone, was be quotable, because what you say means something and will matter and will always be remembered, because you never know when it's something that you say that someone is going to repeat to somebody else. So you can only hope that what they decide to repeat is something worth repeating. So do you have any final words or anything that you want to leave with the audience as well?
I think I've said a lot. Let me be thoughtful with my words because they will be remembered. Well, I do have maybe it's a hack, because I'm somebody that I'm an anxious person. So as much as I can get up and speak and present or whatever, I do have little tricks that help me. So I don't know if throughout this presentation you've seen me holding something. I do think fidgets help. So I have, hard to see, but these are like little fidget magnetic balls.
Oh, yeah.
That you can well, now I've dropped it, but fidget with. And then as well as like this little fidget cube. And so you may or may not have seen me fidgeting this whole time, but it's something to just keep an anxious mind idle. And you're not thinking about it, but it also just kind of takes the edge off. So
right. It just thinking about that right now, it's kind of making me relaxed a little bit, just,
And people out there who are anxious, they might have that might be their tick with their hair or do something, but these little kind of fidget toys, just to have something in your hands, honestly, it goes a long way. You think it's kind of silly, but if you're an anxious person that needs to speak, have something to just do, So I think I'll leave them with that because that's authentic to me.
That is excellent. And it's even something that I am going to use because, even during the course of these types of interviews, I find myself the way I do. I just have to take a deep breath and then let it out. And then that, relaxes me to a certain extent. But I love the idea of having this fidget. You'll have to send me one.
Yeah.
Or I'll get one the next time we see each other.
Yeah, maybe we can post the links. This particular one is new, so I kind of like it. The magnetic little things, they're nice.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Dane, I really want to thank you for just jumping in at the last minute and, being anxious about speaking, but doing it anyway, because you are the prime example of why just taking that step forward works, and to speak even before you really feel that you are ready. And also to our listeners, the first time you speak anyway isn't the end of fear. It's just the beginning of self-trust. So this has been Breaking the Silence, finding the courage to be heard. And until next time, speak once and then speak again.
Yay.
Until next time, bye-bye.
Classy Communications provides public relations and marketing solutions for businesses, professionals, and nonprofit organizations. They can deliver the true meaning of your business with press releases, social media marketing, web development, email marketing, book publishing, and much more. Wherever your potential clients are, they can help you connect with them. Visit classycommunications.net to learn more about their suite of services that can help your business stand out from the rest. Classy Communications is your solution for business success. PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.